Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Monday, February 23rd, 2026, and if you're waking up this morning, pouring your coffee, looking at the headlines, you might be feeling a very specific kind of vertigo right now.
Vertigo is definitely the right word for it. It feels like the ground is just sort of shifting under our feet in about three different directions at once.
It really does, because on one hand, we are living through this absolute golden age of technology. We're looking at reports of AI agents effectively running entire departments of companies. We have electric Ferraris that sound like fighter jets, and the markets, well, at least the tech sector, are just completely defying gravity.
Right, it's like the Roaring Twenties 2.0.
Exactly. But then you flip the page or scroll down the feed, and it looks like a geopolitical thriller that is maybe 5 minutes away from a very bad ending. We are balancing on a knife edge today.
We really are.
Yeah.
And we have a massive stack of sources to get through to make sense of it all.
We do.
We've pulled intelligence from the boardrooms of Tata and Anthropic. We've got analysis on the U.S. debt situation from the CBO. And we have some honestly, very alarming reports regarding the naval buildup in the Middle East.
So the mission for this deep dive is to synthesize all of that for you. We aren't just going to list the news. We need to understand how these things connect. Like, how does a standoff in the Persian Gulf impact the chip shortage?
Right.
How does the U.S. debt spiral impact your portfolio? And why are nations suddenly treating data centers like they used to treat oil refineries?
And we have to talk about the market mechanics, too.
Yeah.
There is a fascinating crisis and a massive opportunity brewing in Indian IT services.
Yes.
We're seeing the explosion of what the sources are calling agentic workforces,
Yeah.
which is completely changing the labor market.
Plus, we've got the fun stuff, that Ferrari EV and the rise of prediction markets where people are literally betting on everything from nuclear war to the Super Bowl set list.
A world of Rico Suave 666. I actually can't wait to get to that part.
It's a brave new world. But look, we have to start with the elephant in the room, the geopolitical brink.
We have to.
Set the scene for us. It is late February 2026. We've been hearing about quote-unquote tensions with Iran for literally decades. Why should the listener care today? Why is this week different from any other week of saber rattling?
Because the chessboard has physically changed. Usually when we talk about tensions, it's diplomatic cables and maybe some new sanctions. Today, we are talking about actual hardware in the water.
Specifics. What are the sources saying we're looking at?
As of this morning, the military reports show the United States has deployed 2 full carrier strike groups to the region, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford.
Okay, stop there. 2 carrier groups. Is that a standard rotation?
Absolutely not. 1 is standard for deterrence.
Right.
2 is an invasion force. We haven't seen this level of concentrated naval firepower in that specific body of water since the build-up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. And it's not just the boats.
What else is there?
It's the air wings. The Pentagon sources indicate they have moved F-35C Lightning II squadrons and F-22 Raptors into forward operating bases. Now, you have to ask yourself, why deploy the F-35 specifically?
Is it stealth?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You use F-35s when you expect to need to penetrate sophisticated air defense systems on day one. You don't park them there for a photo op. This is a kill chain being established.
Wow.
The logistics are in place for a high-intensity conflict.
So the gun is essentially loaded. But what's the trigger? The reports mentioned an ultimatum from President Trump.
Yes. On February 20th, so just 3 days ago, President Trump issued a diplomatic cable that was unusually specific. He gave Iran a 10 to 15-day window.
A deadline.
A hard deadline. And the demand is zero enrichment.
Zero enrichment. Let's unpack that based on the analysis. Is that a negotiable term? Can Iran say, okay, we'll go down to 5%?
That's the problem the foreign policy sources highlight. Zero enrichment is technically and politically almost impossible for the current Iranian regime to agree to without effectively surrendering their sovereignty.
Because it means taking everything apart.
Right. It requires dismantling thousands of centrifuges, destroying stockpiles, and opening every single lab to inspectors.
So if you're a game theorist looking at this, and you see a demand that is impossible to meet, paired with an invasion-level force, what's the conclusion?
The conclusion drawn by defense analysts is that the administration is preparing for the no answer. They are setting the stage for kinetic action.
And the markets are sniffing this out.
They are. Look at the prediction markets. Polymarket has seen a massive spike in volume on this specific topic. The traders people putting real money on the line are pricing in a 57% chance of a U.S. strike by the end of March.
Better than a coin flip. That is terrifying.
It is. And Brent crude is hovering around $71 or $72.
Wait, that seems low. If war is 57% likely, shouldn't oil be at 150?
That's the disconnect the financial analysts are pointing out.
Mm.
The oil market is currently pricing in the enforce scenario, but not the degrade scenario.
Walk us through those scenarios from the Atlantic Council report. If the deadline passes, what happens?
The experts at the Atlantic Council break it down into three paths. First, the enforce. This is the limited version. Maybe 24 to 48 hours of strikes targeting IRGC command centers and drone factories. This would largely be a response to the internal crackdown on protesters we're seeing in Tehran.
A slap on the wrist, militarily speaking.
Relatively. But then you have the degrade. This is the scenario that keeps strategists awake at night. If the zero enrichment deadline passes, the U.S. might launch a comprehensive campaign to physically destroy the nuclear infrastructure. We're talking about bunker-busting munitions hitting Fordo and Natanz.
That's not a skirmish, that's a war.
That is a war. And it opens up the wildcards. We have reports of massive internal unrest in Iran right now. If the regime feels cornered or if they start mass executions of protesters, the U.S. might strike early. Or, if Israel feels the U.S. is hesitating, they might strike preemptively.
It's a powder keg. And this tension isn't just staying in the Gulf, right? It's bleeding into global trade. The sources are calling it tariff chaos.
They are. This is the second-order effect. The EU has frozen approval of a major trade deal with the U.S.
Why? Just because of the Gulf?
No, because of the Supreme Court ruling on Trump's emergency tariff powers. The EU is basically saying, we don't know if the deal we signed today will be honored tomorrow or if you'll slap a 20% tariff on us next week.
So the political uncertainty is just freezing trade.
Exactly. We're seeing reports from Mint that Indian apparel exporters are panicking. They're rushing shipments, literally air freighting goods, just to get them into U.S. ports before a potential 15% tariff hits. Everyone is trying to front-run the political chaos.
So while the physical armies are mobilizing in the Middle East, the sources point to another arms race happening that is just as critical, but it's happening in server rooms.
The pivot to sovereign AI.
I really want to dig into this term, sovereign AI. For the last decade, the whole narrative was the cloud. The cloud is global, it's everywhere and nowhere. Why are nations suddenly obsessed with geography again?
Because they realize that the cloud usually just means computers in Virginia owned by Amazon.
Fair point.
The venture capital firm A16's put out a fascinating analysis on this. They argue that we need to stop thinking of data centers as just storage lockers for our photos and emails. They're now factories.
Factories?
Yes, in the industrial age, you had steel mills and oil refineries. They took raw material and turned it into economic value. Today, a data center takes raw data and electricity, and it produces intelligence.
And just like you didn't want to rely on a foreign power for your steel in 1940,
You don't want to rely on a foreign power for your intelligence in 2026. This is the concept of compute reserves. If you don't have the physical hardware to train and run models within your borders, you are a client state. You are digitally colonized.
digital colonization, that is a heavy phrase. Unpack that for me based on the A16's report. Is it just about economic dependence or is it cultural?
It's deeply cultural. Think about it. If you are the government of Saudi Arabia or India or France, and you implement AI in your education system, that AI is a model trained in San Francisco on data scraped from the Western internet.
It's going to think like a Californian.
Exactly. It's going to have Western biases, Western views on history, Western social norms. If you ask it about a controversial historical event, it will give you the Wikipedia version, not your local version.
So controlling the stack, the chips, the data center, the model weights is actually a form of cultural defense.
It's controlling the national narrative. That's why we are seeing Saudi Arabia launch Project Humane. It's a local hyperscaler. They are building the infrastructure to run AI workloads in the kingdom on their own hardware, subject to their own laws.
And India is doing this too. The story of Sarvam AI in our sources is really interesting here.
Sarvan is a perfect example of this thesis. We have an interview with Pratyush, the co-founder.
Yeah.
They built a sovereign LLM for India. And get this, they did it with a team of 15 people.
15, that sounds small. OpenAI has thousands. How can 15 people build a national model?
That's the beauty of the current open source ecosystem. They aren't inventing the transformer architecture from scratch. They are taking base models and aggressively fine-tuning them on Indian data.
And what makes it Indian? Is it just that it speaks Hindi?
It's much more than translation. It's about the mode of interaction. Pratyush makes this great point in the interview. In the West, we are very text-centric. We type. In India, a huge portion of the population interacts, via voice. They send WhatsApp voice notes.
Right.
So Sarvam isn't just building a text chatbot. They are building a voice-first model that understands the nuances of Indian dialects, the mix of languages, English, Tanglish, and the cultural context. They are focusing on hard tasks like math and science natively in those dialects.
And they're working with the government.
Yes, state governments. Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Maharashtra, they want to use this to improve citizen services. Imagine a farmer in a remote village being able to speak to an AI in their local dialect to understand a new government subsidy without needing to read a complex PDF. That is sovereign AI in action.
It's moving from using AI to building it.
Yeah.
But this desire for control isn't just happening at the national level. It's hitting the corporate world hard too, isn't it?
The enterprise AI revolution, or as the All-In Pod guys were calling it, the privacy panic.
This was a huge topic of discussion this week across the business sources. For a while, the strategy was just use ChatGPT. Why has that changed?
Because the lawyers got involved.
Yeah.
Boardrooms are waking up to the reality that they cannot pump their proprietary strategy documents, their actuarial tables, their secret chemical formulas into a public endpoint like Claude or GPT-4.
Because once it's in the model, where does it go?
Exactly. Once you feed it into the public model, it becomes part of the training data, or at least leaves your walled garden. If you paste a confidential client email into a public chatbot to summarize it, you might have just waived confidentiality.
Yikes. So what's the solution? Are companies going back to buying servers and sticking them in the closet?
Surprisingly, yes. They're calling it the lobster tank solution.
The lobster tank.
You know how fancy seafood restaurants have the lobsters right there in the tank? You pick one, and it never leaves the premises until it's on your plate.
Okay, I like that analogy.
The idea is on-premises infrastructure. Companies are buying secure hardware, literal stacks of Mac Studios, private clouds, dedicated NVIDIA racks, just to run local LLMs. The data never leaves the building.
So on-prem is the new cloud. We've come full circle.
We have. Security is forcing the pendulum to swing back. But there's another factor driving this, and it's pure economics. The cost of agents.
Oh, this was the part of the analysis that completely blew my mind. We need to do the math for the listener here, because I think most people assume AI is cheap. You know, it's software, it costs fractions of a cent.
It costs fractions of a cent per token. But when you have an agent, the math changes completely.
Define agent first. How is that different from a chatbot?
A chatbot waits for you to talk to it. You say, write me a poem, it writes a poem and stops. An agent has a goal. You say, analyze our competitors' pricing, scrape their website, update our database, and draft a report.
So it's active, it's continuously working in the background.
Correct. It's looping. It thinks, it acts, it checks its work, it realizes it made a mistake, it tries again. This is called chain of thought or reasoning loops. And every single step of that loop burns tokens.
And the meter is running.
The meter is spinning. The All-In sources had an anecdote about this. They are seeing single superstar developer agent software that codes autonomously, racking up $300 a day in API token costs.
$300 a day. Let's just do the napkin math on that. That's roughly $9,000 a month, over $100,000 a year.
You are paying the software a six-figure salary.
That is wild. But is it worth it?
That's the scary part for the labor market.
Yes.
Because that $100,000 agent doesn't sleep, it doesn't take weekends off, it doesn't have HR disputes, and its output might be 10x or 20x what a human junior developer can produce.
So the unit economics work, but the budget lines are completely shifting. You're not paying payroll tax, you're paying compute bills.
And this is creating entirely new job titles. The prompt engineer is already dead. The new role is agent manager.
The OpenClaw Ultron manager.
I love that name from the sources. OpenClaw Ultron. But seriously, imagine a manager whose team isn't 5 human people sitting in a conference room. It's 5 specialized AI agents. One does research, one writes code, one does QA, one updates the sales database. The human's job is just orchestrate them, to be the conductor.
Which brings us to a very uncomfortable question. If I can buy an agent for $100K that does the work of 10 coders, what happens to the outsourcing model? What happens to the Indian IT sector?
This is the billion-dollar question. The sources are calling it the crisis narrative for Indian IT.
And looking at the markets this week, investors are panicking.
It was a bloodbath. The Nifty IT index tanked. Wipro was down 16%. The Nifty IT was down around 10% overall. Goldman Sachs put out a brutal pair trade note. They basically said, go long on AI software companies and go short on IT services.
The logic being, why hire Wipro to write code when Claude can do it instantly?
That's the fear. But this is a massive, but the industry leaders are fighting back hard on this narrative. We heard from N. Chandrasekharan of Tata Sons and Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic.
Let's start with Chandra from Tata. He brought up the steam engine analogy.
Right. This is the classic Jevons paradox. He argues that AI is an infrastructure change, much like steam or electricity. When the steam engine came along, it made using coal much more efficient. So logic would dictate we should have used less coal.
But we used more.
We used exponentially more, because when energy became cheap, we found a million new ways to use it. Chandra is arguing that AI lowers the cost of basic tasks, coding, translating, summarizing so much that latent demand will explode.
Meaning there is a ton of software that companies always wanted to build but couldn't afford to.
Exactly. Small departmental apps, internal tools, customized dashboards, they're always too expensive to hire a human team for. Now they get built.
But who builds them? The AI.
The AI generates the code, but you still need an integrator. And this is the core defense for companies like Tata and Infosys. You can't just install AI into a company like Barclays or Tata Steel.
Why?
Because they are incredibly messy. They have legacy systems. They have mainframes from 1990 running COBOL. They have SAP, Oracle, and physical factories with analog sensors. You need a human team to glue the shiny new AI model into the old, complex corporate reality.
So the role shifts from we write code for you to we integrate intelligence into your mess.
That's some integration. Dario Amodei from Anthropic used the Lego blocks analogy. He said Anthropic provides the Lego bricks, but someone still needs to design and build the castle. That's why Anthropic announced a major partnership with Infosys. They need these service companies to actually deploy their models in the real world.
So the death of Indian IT might be greatly exaggerated. It's just evolving.
It's an evolution from body shopping, just renting out human coders, to high-end architectural work.
Yeah.
And we can't ignore industrial AI either. Tata is building battery plants and semiconductor fabs with an AI-first approach.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning they aren't retrofitting digital twins onto old steel plants. They are designing the factory from day one to be run by AI agents. That is a massive growth sector that has nothing to do with writing Java code for a bank.
So we've looked at the microeconomics of agents and the sector economics of IT. Let's zoom out to the macro, the big picture, because the economic dashboard right now from these reports is confusing.
Confusing is an understatement. We have two competing narratives playing out simultaneously, the doom scenario and the boom scenario.
Let's start with the doom. Get the bad news out of the way, the debt.
The Congressional Budget Office dropped a report that is, frankly, eye-watering. They are forecasting U.S. federal debt to hit $56 trillion by 2036.
56 trillion. I can't even visualize that number.
The analysis calls it the death spiral. The key metric here is the deficit to GDP ratio. It's hitting 6%, which is double the historical target. The fear is a feedback loop. You have so much debt that the interest payments consume your entire budget, so you have to borrow more money just to pay the interest.
Like paying off one credit card with another credit card.
Forever. We are looking at U.S. debt to GDP approaching 120%. That puts the U.S. in the same club as Italy or Greece. Historically, that is not a club you want to be in.
And yet the economy doesn't feel like Greece. We aren't seeing austerity. We're seeing growth.
That's the boom scenario the bulls are pointing to. Despite this terrifying debt, U.S. GDP growth in late 2025 was 4 to 5%. Unemployment is rock bottom at 4.3%. The government workforce is shrinking down 300,000 jobs, but the private sector is growing. And the reason is largely this massive injection of capital into AI.
The CapEx boom.
The hyperscalers, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, are pouring roughly $600 billion a year into infrastructure. Data centers, fiber optics, power plants.
600 billion, that's bigger than most government stimulus packages.
Exactly. It's a privately funded stimulus. It's providing a 2% tailwind to GDP all on its own. It's creating a massive growth in non-residential construction. If you drive around Northern Virginia or Texas, you see cranes everywhere building data centers and factories.
Which brings us to the labor market. If we're building all these factories, who is swinging the hammers? This touches on the immigration debate that was featured in the sources.
It does. And there was a very interesting angle on this discussed recently, keeping in mind we are just looking at the policy proposals neutrally here. The debate in Washington is shifting from chaotic raids to what they call a surveil proposal.
Explain the difference.
Historically, immigration enforcement meant raiding a chicken processing plant or a construction site and arresting workers. The new proposal is to go after the demand side using technology, surveillance cameras, digital audits at construction sites, and hospitality chains.
To target the employers.
Yes. If a business owner is hiring illegal labor, you use that surveillance to find them into oblivion.
So you make it economically impossible to hire undocumented workers.
Correct. And the economic theory being debated is that this would force wages up. If you cut off the supply of cheaper labor, construction firms will have to raise wages to attract the remaining 7% of the American workforce currently sitting on the sidelines. Minimum wage hikes could follow.
It's a gamble on wage pressure versus inflation. If you have to pay the construction worker $50 an hour, the cost of the data center goes up.
Everything is connected. The debt, the AI boom, the labor supply. It's a very complex web.
All right, let's shift gears. We've done the heavy lifting on the macro. Let's talk about the market movers, the specific corporate stories hitting the ticker tape this week. I want to start with something that sounds like a joke, but the sources insist is a serious financial trend.
Prediction markets.
The Super Bowl incident. Talk to me about Rico Suave 666.
You literally cannot make this stuff up. So there is a user on the prediction market platform Polymarket named Rico Suave 666. And this user correctly predicted the exact set list for the Super Bowl halftime show.
Okay, lucky guess.
It was way too accurate to be a guess. And this has triggered a massive debate about insider trading.
Is it illegal to bet on a set list if you're, say, a backup dancer or a sound engineer?
That's the regulatory gray zone. In the stock market, we have Reg FD fair disclosure. If a CEO tells his brother to buy stock before a merger, that's a crime. But is a halftime show's set list material non-public information?
Probably not to the SEC.
Exactly. But it's not just pop culture. This is where it gets serious. The Wall Street Journal reported that Israeli soldiers might be using prediction markets to bet on military strikes before they happen.
Whoa. That is a whole different level.
It suggests that prediction markets are becoming the most accurate source of truth in the world because they're capturing insider information that isn't in the news yet. It's a marketplace of truth, but it's fueled by leaks.
So if you want to know what's really happening, don't read the paper, watch the betting odds.
Pretty much.
Let's talk IPOs and startups. We have some interesting ones coming up. Clean, Max, and Viro.
Yes, they have an upcoming IPO listing on the BSE and NSE. This is significant because it ties directly into that energy theme we discussed. They focus on renewable power and carbon credits.
And with AI data centers drinking electricity like it's water.
Renewable infrastructure is a massive growth sector. If you're building a sovereign AI factory, you need an incredible amount of power. Clean Max is a direct play on that demand.
And what about Healthify? The sources mention them pivoting.
Healthify is making a fascinating move. They used to be primarily about calorie counting logging your lunch. Now they're moving into medical AI, specifically managing users on GLP-1 drugs.
Like Ozempic and Wegovy.
Right. These drugs are incredibly effective, but they require serious lifestyle management. Healthify is using AI to monitor and guide patients through that. It's a very smart move to ride the broader healthcare AI wave beyond just diagnostics. And speaking of the consumer market,
We have to talk about the car, the auto corner, the Ferrari EV.
launching in May 2026. The Ferrari, that sounds like a jet.
I have to admit, reading the reports, I'm skeptical. An electric Ferrari. Doesn't that defeat the purpose? The whole point is the V12 engine noise.
That's what everyone thought. But the early buzz in the automotive press is fascinating. It's a 1,000-plus horsepower machine. Now, the exterior design is polarizing. Some critics say it looks too much like a Corvette. But the interior, that's the real story.
Okay, it's different about it.
It was designed with input from Jony Ive's team, the guy who famously designed the iPhone. And you know what they did? They brought back the buttons.
Buttons.
Actual physical tactile buttons. Unlike Tesla or the VW Terran R-Line, which just launched and put everything on a giant iPad, Ferrari realized that luxury is tactile. Rich people want to feel the machine. The start button is deliberately designed to feel like a jet ignition sequence.
That is actually a really profound insight. In a world where everything is a smooth glass screen, texture becomes a luxury good.
Exactly. The analog soul of the machine is the moat. Ferrari knows they can't compete on battery range alone. A standard Kia might beat them on range. But they can compete on emotion. They are mixing analog soul with digital tech.
So we've covered the entire waterfront today. We have carrier strike groups in the Gulf, sovereign AI factories in Riyadh and Mumbai, debt spirals in Washington, and tactile buttons in Maranello.
It's a lot to process for one Monday morning.
It is. But if we pull the thread on all these sources, there is a common theme here.
The theme is the violent collision of the old world and the new world.
Right. We have the old world of kinetic warfare, sovereign borders, legacy IT systems, and massive federal debt. And it's crashing into this new world of borderless AI, agentic labor, EVs, and prediction markets.
And it leaves us with a very provocative question to consider. Are we heading for a splinter net of intelligence?
What do you mean by that?
Well, if every nation builds its own sovereign AI, trained entirely on its own cultural data, aligned with its own local values, and walled off from the rest, does truth become geographical?
That is deep.
Does the answer to a basic history question or a legal question change depending on whether your server is located in Riyadh, Beijing, or Silicon Valley? We might be moving away from a worldwide web of shared information to a fractured world of national intelligences. Your geography determines your truth.
A balkanized brain. That is definitely something for you to chew on today. But before we let everyone go, let's bring it back to earth. For the investor listening to this, trying to navigate these choppy waters, what are the key takeaways from all these sources?
Let's do the bottom line. The 10 developments from these sources that are most relevant for long-term investors.
Hit me. Number one.
Number one is sovereign AI infrastructure. Don't just look at the software companies. Look at the hardware providers and partners building these national AI factories. The domestic hyperscalers are essentially the new national monuments.
Number two.
Number two, the on-premises renaissance. The enterprise privacy panic is real. Invest in the hardware and security firms that are enabling private AI for corporations. The companies selling the lobster tanks like Apple and private cloud providers.
Number three.
Number three, energy and commodities. Oil volatility is back due to the Iran risk, but the longer-term play is the massive energy demand for AI data centers. Look at renewable producers and grid infrastructure.
Number four.
Number four, IT services evolution. Avoid the generic body shops. Look for the system integrators who own the complex client context. Companies forming strategic partnerships to integrate AI, like the TCS and Infosys deals with Anthropic.
Number five.
Number five, agentic workforce tools. The agent manager is the new hot job, and they need a dashboard. Companies building the management layer for AI agents will be massive.
Number six.
Number six, defense and security. The world is not getting safer. The combination of U.S.-Iran tension and the need for sovereign data control means defense spending is going up across the board.
Number seven.
Number seven, data center construction. The physical build-out is a multi-year boom. This is a massive tailwind for non-residential construction firms, building materials, and real estate.
Number eight.
Number eight, prediction markets. This is effectively a new asset class. Even if you don't bet, you should be monitoring platforms like Polymarket as a primary data source for gauging real-world risk.
Number nine.
Number nine, healthcare AI. The move is way beyond simple diagnostics now. Look for companies integrating AI into long-term lifestyle management and drug delivery monitoring.
And finally, number 10.
Number 10, the luxury mode. In a world of completely commoditized digital tech, brands that can mix analog soul with digital performance will survive. Bet on companies that understand tactile luxury.
There you have it. 10 solid developments to steer your portfolio by.
It's going to be an incredibly volatile week.
It certainly is. Keep an eye on the carrier groups in the Gulf. Keep an eye on those API token costs. And maybe check the prediction markets before you read the news.
Sound advice.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and we'll catch you on the next one.